Brrbo, brrbo. Bugga, 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 bugga. So we started this job because the tires on this Grom were sort of an off-road style, and after probably a couple thousand kilometers on the road, they cup and sawtooth really bad, and the bike was almost undrivable. So like all tire jobs, you start by pulling that rear axle. As soon as I started pulling this axle, I could see that the last person stripped the axle threads. Uh, it's the second one of these Groms I've seen this has happened. And there was another Yamaha TW200 that I did. Same deal, axle stripped. So there you see, the threads are kind of messed up. What I ended up doing with this one was retapping and just using a temporary bolt for now. But to get the chain off, you have to loosen off the slack and allow the chain to come off. At this point, I noticed that the sprocket and chain were in pretty rough shape, so I knew I was going to be cleaning those before I reassembled the bike. This is my favorite tool in my shop. It is my tire machine. Tiny tires are a nightmare when it comes to mounting and balancing. It's so hard compared to big tires, but one of the problems is you always end up having to adjust your machine because the diameter changes so much. So some of the like adventure bikes or dirt bikes have 21-inch tires or wheels, and these little Groms have a 12. So I have to change the jaws on my machine every time I do one so that it can clamp the wheel entirely. And there, now the machine can clamp the wheel completely. I find that to remove old tires, because they're usually quite a bit older, you know, they've been on there for 5 6 years or even longer. They're pretty dried out. So I give them a squirt of silicone, and it helps get them off way easier. I do not miss my manual tire machine at all. Every time I watch a video of me pulling tires off, it's so easy. Sometimes I'll use a white soapy paste from like a tire supply instead of the silicone spray. But on this tire, I decided to use silicone spray. It must have been handy. So these extra arms are definitely one of my favorite parts of my tire machine. It makes it super good to not have the bead crawl up onto the wheel and potentially cause damage as I'm installing it. The crappy thing about this situation right now is when I realize what direction the tire is. Yep, right there. So off it comes again. Good thing is it's nice, fresh, clean rubber, and it's super flexible and soft. So flip it around the right way and don't be an idiot. There we go. Now I'll bead up the tire and I will install balance beads, I believe, on this one. Yep. So I only bead one side at a time. Then I'll measure out the appropriate weight in balance beads to put in. So I'll put the beads in through the side of of the the tire bead itself. The balance beads find their center, and your tire gives you the least amount of vibrations and shakes this way. It also allows the tire to rebalance itself consistently. So I do offer a static balance for some people, that prefer, stick on weights or, stick on weights, I guess. It's the only ones. But here back at the bike, I have a look at the sprocket. It is filthy. So I end up taking it. Here, I'll show you guys. Yep, so there it is. Filthy, not good. Take it over to my kerosene tank and clean it up. Good to go. Don't mind the squeaky toy. We got a puppy around here. So when I go to clean up the chain, I will use kerosene still again for my parts cleaner, and I'll put it in one of these trays and not put it back in the system because the chain makes them just filthy. But with the tire off, it's really nice. You just set the chain right down into a bath of kerosene and kind of string it along. You'll see here I grab my my Moose Racing chain brush. There's a bunch of people that make this same brush. It's got replaceable bristles on it, and I mean, even initially the whole thing's like $25. So the replacement bristles are like $5 and they last forever. But you just grab the chain and scrub away. This chain is a classic non-O-ring chain. They really have a short life. I've upgraded a couple of these little Hondas with, I believe DID make a O-ring chain, and it's a huge difference in how the bike runs. They sound a lot quieter. The chains last a lot longer, but the stock Honda chain is glorified garbage. Like, it just lasts like 400 or 500 kilometers and then it's shot. So I recommend anybody that has like this or a Monkey or a CT or whatever the new 125s are, put on a new chain. So then after you've got it all cleaned up, run it along again with your with a rag. Have a good look at it. Make sure there's no kinks or anything like that, and then reinstall the wheel. So anytime you have a wheel off, of course, you check your wheel bearings. Make sure they don't have any grit in them, and they're smooth. I like to apply a little bit of dielectric grease where that sprocket fits into its rubber bushings, and make sure it just slides in nicely. Tech tip right here: make sure that you put the chain on the correct side of the wheel so that you don't put your axle in and go, oh wait, yeah, right, there's a chain on this bike. You can always tell when this guy figures it out. Right about now. See, at this point there, I touched the chain and realized there's no way I'm getting that back on there. So while my back is covering it, I pulled the axle back out, snuck the chain around where it should be, and carried on. See, one of the tricky things you have to do always on the back of a bike as well is get that disc rotor to fit between the brake pads. And on this bike, pretty simple. You just spread them apart a little bit, the pads, and it just slides together really easy. So I've got a master set of tap and die, and I'm looking at my axle, seeing what's the biggest size I can go with to retain, a large nut. But I do have to fix that axle so that the customer can drive this thing while he's waiting for his new axle to show up. It's just a Grom, so it's not a huge deal. But if it was a large street bike, there's no way I would temporarily fix it like this. This is sped up almost 600%. So you can kind of get a grasp on how long some of these little repairs take when you're working on bikes and quads and stuff. Like, it takes a long time to figure out all these little issues that happen. And yeah, thank goodness for speeding things up, because otherwise this video, when I started it, was like 2.5 hours long. So at this point, you have to check your chain tension. On Groms, you're supposed to check them on the side stand, but here I noticed that someone has installed the clip for the master link backwards. So there's a little trick with a clip. If you picture them like an arrow, and the open part on the back is the feathers, and you go from the top of the chain from the way it travels. So the chain, rotates this way, and as it's headed towards the front of the bike, if you kind of align the arrow, so make a pretend arrow out of your master link, and have the open end as the feathers and the closed end as the pointy part, you always want that shooting towards the front of the bike as you're driving. So you just take that, you flip it around, and then in this situation, I'm just using needle nose pliers. These little 420 chains are just they're really, really tiny, so they're super easy to do. But often, like, you could see how the master link is pretty loose and it would come apart. In the big sport bike chains, those are actually almost pressed through, so they are pressed together and they don't just fall apart like that. Now, after you've got your chain on, it's rare for me not to use my alignment tools. So this is a Motion Pro chain aligner, and it clamps onto the rear sprocket, and you can line up whether or not the rear wheel is, driving straight by how it looks when you've got, the line of sight down the chain links. So as long as that little bar is even on the links when you look down from basically this angle, then you're okay. But if it's not, then you use the left and right chain adjusters to make everything straight. Now that I'm happy with how the chain is lined up and tensioned, take your alignment tool off so you don't bend the rod. You have to get that tool off, and then you just use your Maxima chain wax, and only Maxima chain wax as far as I'm concerned, on your chain, and soak her in there and let it dry so that you get maximum both lubrication for the matting surface between the sprocket and the chain, and if it was an O-ring chain, it's a nice way to lubricate the seals themselves. So I only use Maxima chain wax. It's also the best one to keep dirt and water from corroding your chain. Then make sure you get your guard put back together, and this is the point where I flip my Grom around so I can do the front tire. Sometimes it's really nice to work on such tiny motorcycles because they don't require a lot of grunt physical work, and they're cute. So I just get that wheel in the clamp. Side note, any weird noises you hear in my video, it's life around my house. We all craft and do, fun things in the night, and where I record my voiceovers is not far from where my wife does all of her glitter and crafting and sublimation. So you'll hear all kinds of sounds, and then also we have dogs and laundry, and it's a busy house. So now that I've got the the bike ready for taking the front wheel off, I find the best spot to lift and yeah, get the front wheel up. I'll use a block of wood and the engine itself on this one. It's so light, you're not going to cause any damage. So there it is. Lots of room. You can really see that how bad that tire had worn. It's so sawtooth that it would vibrate your hands. You'd already seen how that was done once, so it's done again. Magic, it's back, ready to go back on the bike. You'll see here after I get the wheel installed that I'll grab a jug of isopropyl alcohol and I'll just clean the tire, best I can. Sometimes I'll use Dawn, and it just gives the tire the best chance of getting rid of all that silicone spray for the first test ride. But that's it. 2 tires, a clean chain, and this little Grom is ready to go. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you sticking with me while I learn how to do these videos and edit and do voiceovers. So have a good day.